All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, I'll be doing a Week 10 preview and prediction for a contest between Army and Air Force. Black Knights, 2.5-point road favorites, 49.5 the total, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS. Everything started with this Army offense on the Air Force defense. For Army, this is a unit at times it's really struggled. 23.9 points per game. Sometimes they've been able to come alive. Games like, Charlotte, UAB, North Texas. I mean, they dominated time of possession against Kansas State, but in terms of scoring points, it's been less than ideal for them. And then they were able to manufacture 358 total yards of offense against Tulane in a game that looked like they were going to win. They ended up blowing that one late. Before this offense, it just seems like their ceiling is kind of capped out. I really don't know how much growth is left for them at this point in this season, but they are going to be led by Cale Helms, that quarterback who's having a pretty good year. 613 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. Doesn't throw the football a whole lot, about 5 attempts per game for about 7 yards per attempt. So that's not really a great focal point of their offense, is throwing the football, of course, in this triple option. Teams like Air Force and Navy, though, they've had a lot of success as of late throwing the football, so I think that's an important thing to note. Brady Anderson, though, 264 and 2 touchdowns, has been their big play receiver. Noah Short, he leads the team with 14 receptions. He's also the top running back on this team with 353 yards. No touchdowns, though, on the ground. Hayden Reed, 322 yards and 3 scores. Those guys combined for 103 rushing per game. You also have Dwayne Coleman at quarterback. He came in against North Texas, almost led that comeback. Wasn't all that impressive in the last couple of weeks after that. Didn't even play against Tulane. So I'm not sure if he's going to factor in much here. Helms, it's going to be his offense. And for Army, they're going up against an abysmal Air Force defense that has just been horrid this year. It's leading the Falcons to playing some very exciting games. They played as best as they probably could against Wyoming, 409 yards allowed, held them to 21 points. Before that, they were on a stretch of giving up 500 pretty much weekly, 4 straight games, complete shootouts in those contests. All the way back in week 2 against Utah State, they almost gave up another 500 in a 49-30 loss. So this defense has really been struggling. I mean, bad. I mean, they're dead last in yards per game allowed. They're also dead last in pass defense, and that's just not something Army's going to be able to take advantage of, right? So I think Air Force here, this is an opportunity for them to really stand tall and perform a little bit better because they know what's going to come. These condensed run formations in the triple option. The defensive back staying disciplined, that's obviously going to be big when it comes to Army trying to air it out, as it always is against triple option offenses. But there's not as much complexity they're going to be facing. Against Navy, though, that was the similar style of offense that tore them up for 500 plus yards, 34 points. Ended up losing that one by 3. UNLV, a highly balanced approach, had 600 yards on them. Boise State as well. So the teams they've been struggling against for the most part have a lot more talent than Army, and they also have a lot more variation when it comes to what they're going to be playing in terms of creativity. So here it's going to be simple for Air Force, and I know Navy was able to tear them apart, but Blake Horvath is also a very good passer. Army, they're not going to look to do that as much. So even though Air Force has been awful on defense, this is an opportunity for them to play a quite good game. They're led by Peyton Zidrock on the defensive line. He's very good. Aiden Schwartz has been respectable. Isaac Hubert has been a really good run defender. Him and Zidrock are their top pass rushers as well. So they do have some guys that can make things happen. In terms of creating negative plays, Hubert does that tremendously. 9.5 tackles for loss from his linebacking position. You also have Blake Fletcher leading the way with 69 tackles at linebacker. So the defense, even though it's one of the worst we've probably ever seen under Troy Calhoun, they do have a couple of playmakers that can stand tall, especially in short yardage in games like this. And then in the secondary, Corey Johnson, Makeel Sheehan. These guys have really struggled this year in coverage. So there's going to be opportunities, I think, if Army wants to unveil some play action to get things done. And again, it's just been a terrible defense, but maybe last week against Wyoming is a bit of a confidence booster for the Falcons. I think the other side of things, the games have been really exciting, like I alluded to earlier, because their offense has been able to really keep up. And I think the Falcons have been shockingly impressive after being terrible last year on offense. They were not very good one bit. This year, they've doubled up on production immensely, led by quarterback Liam Shazarka. This guy's been great. 9 touchdowns rushing, 103 yards per game on the ground, another 151 through the air with 8 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He's been able to give them a nice dual threat dimension to this offense. Cade Harris leading the way with 492 yards receiving. Quinn Smith right behind him at 275 with 27.5 yards per catch, about 20 yards per catch as a team. So they are a big play offense through the air. And on the ground, they're doing a great job of staying consistent. 283 yards per contest. Owen Allen, Dylan Carson, some veteran running backs. Carson's a fullback at 215 pounds, plays with a lot of power, has some nice speed as well. He can rip off some big runs. Owen Allen, 3 touchdowns for him. Very good rushing attack here. Against Navy, they were held to about 211 yards. And then against Hawaii, they only had about 216. But other than that, they've really been able to rip off some large numbers. I mean, 428 against UNLV with 6 touchdowns is absurd. I mean, it just shows you the ceiling that they have as a rushing attack, right? Those type of numbers. And then 330 against Wyoming, getting back to their bread and butter, staying consistent in that area. So I think Air Force is really good offense. Cesarca at quarterback has been very impressive, kind of an unsung hero. Sophomore out of Aurora, Colorado. He's been a high producer for this team with 17 total touchdowns. You're going up against the Army defense, who I got a good look at against North Texas a couple weeks ago. That was a game I was highly interested in. I'm pretty sure I picked Army to win that game, and they just couldn't get a stop. I mean, they late in the game were able to create a field to force overtime, but at the end of the day, it was just too little too late. They still had issues when it comes to defending, the pass and the run. 478 yards allowed in that one. East Carolina as a team that also had 400 plus on them, and then Tulane had another 400-yard game. So this is a defense that has been, shaky. I mean, they even gave up 350 yards almost to Tarleton State back in week 1, so they've really not been that good themselves. They just haven't been giving up as much production as Air Force has. I think when it comes to slowing down this run game, same goes for them, right? You know what's going to be coming for the most part, even though Air Force does have more pedigree through the air. There's no real standouts for them on the defensive line. Jack Latore, Jack Bosom maybe are probably going to be your best ones. Dylan Stowers is a guy in the rotation that's been helpful, especially as a tackler in the hole, but no one that's really great. I think your best players are going to be at linebacker. Caleb Fortner, a veteran's having a good year. Andon Thomas, he's also having a pretty good season. He has been very inconsistent, leading the team in missed tackles. And then in the secondary, looking at Jaden Myers, Justin Weaver, some veterans who've been pretty respectable this year in coverage. Casey Larkin, a very good safety. I think overall he's probably your best player on this defense. And alongside him, Colin Matson, he's been very solid, especially in coverage. So I think the safeties are very good, and they're going to have opportunities to create because Air Force will look to throw the football downfield. And if you can run with these wide receivers, which I envision they might be able to, then they should be able to potentially create some plays, maybe more so for the corners, not the safeties, right? But I think these safeties downhill against the run are going to be pretty impactful. These games are always tough to predict, right? That leads us to the final analysis and the prediction. I think on paper, this one seems simple, right? Like Army should come and just blitz this defense. It's been pretty horrible this year. But I don't think the Army defense has anything special themselves. And again, I alluded to their production not being nearly as bad. And it's really not, right? It's pretty respectable numbers, despite them giving up 400 plus yards in a couple different games. But this Falcons offense is legit. I mean, nobody's really been able to hold them in check. Running the football, they're very good at it. Passing the football, when you can do that in this triple option offense, that gives you a handful of different things you can look to do on this side of the ball. In Sarka, with them dropping back a good amount, 13 pass attempts per game, that's going to allow him to take off and run at times as well, where Army's not going to be prepared for a quarterback run off of play action. That's going to allow the drives to continue, and I think in the red zone as well. So I'm going to take Air Force to win this one. They've lost the last two to Army, where they were not able to generate many points at all. They haven't had an offense like this over the last couple of years, though. So I think their defense as well, even though they've been horrible, they know what's coming. Again, those condensed formations down the triple option gives them less to think about. They know what they're going to be looking for, and I think that's going to allow them to make some big plays compared to playing teams like Hawaii, UNLV, and then, of course, Navy. They hung into that game as well, only losing by 3 points. So I think here, Commander-in-Chief game, I think the Falcons are going to get done as home underdogs, slight ones at that, even though they have the worst defense. I think they have a pretty good neutralizer in their own offense, and I think their defense will be able to come up with some stops here, especially in short yardage. So I'm going to take Air Force as a slight dog here to get the job done. It's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.